Welcome to the fourth episode of the Participation Coaching Podcast with Adam Young. Hello everyone, this is Wojciech Waśniewski and welcome to the Participation Coaching Podcast, which is my little quest to explore non-performance coaching. So coaching beginner golfers, recreational players, junior golfers. How could we do it more effectively? Today I'm joined by Adam Young. He's a world-class coach and a best-selling author of the practice manual. And we talk about accelerating skill acquisition in beginner golfers. We talk about Adam's philosophies, Adam's coaching process with brand new beginners. We talk about things like setting expectations, interesting drills that can bypass 10 years of instruction, very simple drills. We talk about coaching abroad, why beginners are different to elite players. We talk about the differences between German and South American golfers, the value of consistency versus technique in beginners, and using various tools that could accelerate skill acquisition with beginners, and should we use it or not. It's a very interesting conversation. Go check out Adam at his website, adamyounggolf.com. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and as always, let me know what you thought on the website, ParticipationCoaching.com. Adam, what do you do these days?
I'm coaching golf currently in Santa Barbara, in sunny California. And my role has changed recently, more from the typical one-on-one lesson, the 1 hour leave for a week and then come back. It's almost like a gym membership now, where people pay a monthly fee and they get access to up to 20 sessions a week. And some people use almost all of those. They just come along to a session. There'll be a new topic each time. So one might be a performance game that we're doing. One might be a skill game. We have the occasional technical sessions as well. So they get a good mix of things that will improve them. And it's great for them because they get more of a coach's eye on them. So they can be guided more often, keep them on track. I can also direct them where they need to improve the most. Something that is tough with the individual lesson model. And I can also show them how to practice, which is a huge benefit as well. And also doing that model, I can do certain things that you can't do in an individual lesson, like set them a task or set them a game, and then just watch as they're practicing that. So I might set them the task of, here is a fairway from this target to this target, and see how many times in a row you can hit it. Normally the game's a little bit more complex than that, but that's something you couldn't do in an individual lesson because someone would say, well, I can do this on my own. But this is more supervised practice, I think, is the official term for it.
What level of golfers come to the sessions? Beginners? Or?
Mainly higher handicappers. We do have a lot of beginners coming in. The lowest handicap at the moment, I think, is 6. There's a few sort of 12, 15 handicaps, but mainly higher handicaps, beginners, people who need a little bit more attention as well.
And you've got everyone in the same group?
Yes, yeah, which has been an interesting challenge, how to create tasks and how to get everybody practicing similar things, but at a level which suits them. And it's...
Yes, you're sort of known for your, let's say, unique approaches to teaching golf that you described in your excellent book, The Practice Manual. But just to get a bit of a background on you, like how did you start playing golf? Is it something like your perspective based on what your experience was when you were younger, or is it something completely different now?
Yeah, I think every coach out there, well, it's impossible as a human being not to put your own development into your coaching philosophies. And I think I went a backward route to how most golf instructors go. So I started at 15 years old, which is relatively late. And I was quite an analytical person, as I am now. So I would get every book I could out of the library. Started with things like Ledbetter books. I remember reading Sandy Lyle's book also. And I just became obsessed with the technique. I got Nick Faldo's book out. I loved all the pictures in that, all the positions. So yeah, I would spend my nights, my evenings practicing positions and swings. Recording Tiger Woods' swing because he was dominating at the time I was just starting, and then I would freeze frame his swing and go by frame and try and copy everything he did, which I think serves some benefit definitely. But I can also see how that approach held me back. I was copying things that maybe my body was not able to do. And I also put a lot of stock in the swing motion and not enough in what actually matters or what actually creates a golf shot in terms of impact. Why does the ball fly like it does? So I never really understood those things. Those are things that were just improved through a sheer amount of practice, really. So that was my development, really analytical. And I kind of started teaching in that way as well. And I quickly realized it didn't work, or it wasn't as effective as I wanted it to be. I mean, players got better, but it wasn't as effective as I wanted. And so I found other ways that were more instinctive, tapped into people's creativity. And moving to the Cranfield Golf Academies helped open my eyes to things that I was resistant to at first. So a good example is a hammer nail drill. So you place a ball down on the ground with a nail through it. You give the player a club which has a mallet on the end, and you'd say, how would you hammer this? And what I saw was players with really weird swings would their swing would clean up a lot. In fact, that simple idea would often fix 10, maybe even 20 things that I could see that were faults.
Hmm.
And the player didn't even realize it. So that started me thinking, and I was really resistant to this. I didn't want to believe that this was true, that you could give someone something so simple and see such dramatic changes. But seeing that enough times really changed my philosophy on how to develop, why we move like we move. And how to coach more effectively. And I don't think I've thrown everything I've learned in the past out, quite on the contrary. But it was more of a tool I added to my coaching repertoire that was really, it's given me the kind of unique perspective. So I have to thank the guys like Scott Cranfield, Stephen Orr, coaches like that I watched early on in my career that really shaped how I teach now.
Would you use the same tools and methods of the drills like you described with all levels of players, with beginners and elite players?
Good question. I think there are certain exercises that get people in the ballpark quicker. So a great analogy, Ledbetter coach, he said, it's like having a massive block of ice and you're trying to create a sculpture out of it. And for a beginner, you just have to smash that block of ice into something that represents a general shape. And then as the player gets better, you're chipping off just little bit by little bit, and the actual sculpture comes together. And you see the same with the golf swing as well. So while the hammer and nail analogy might not be perfect, it might not be an exact representation of the swing mechanics of elite players, it's close enough to get someone with a horrible golf swing. I can't think of anything more politically correct. So from a horrible golf swing into something that at least looks like golf, and do it in the easiest way, the quickest way, and with minimal thought, effort, and training from the player. So you can bypass maybe, in some cases, 10 years of training in one swing just by giving someone that hammer nail or other ideas that are similar.
So what, in an ideal world, what would you do with a brand new beginner if you had them? Or what did you do, or what are you doing if you get a brand new golfer? What does the first hour look like?
Probably the first thing, I learned this from the Cranfield Academies, was simply a copy me approach. So I would stand in front of the players, and I wouldn't spend a great deal of time doing this. And I don't hit golf balls at the same time, because a lot of that will change the beginner's expectations to, I need to hit the ball perfectly. I actually demonstrate a lot of bad shots at first to show them what a top shot looks like, or a toe shot, just so they expect that. And I guide their expectations at the start. I'll say maybe 90% of your shots will be like this at first. If you can get 10% in the air, that's excellent for a beginner. So lots of it is setting the expectations at the start. Mechanically, I would maybe use the rubber tee on the driving range and just make a few swings in front of them, slow motion, or not slow motion, but kind of smooth swings. And I just ask them to watch. And then I question them. I say, what things did you see? And they say X, Y, and Z. On a one-to-one basis, if I need someone to do something, say they're completely collapsing their left arm, or they have no width at all, then I might make swings where I exaggerate that trait. to the point that they spot it. And if they don't, I ask them a question. What do you see with my arms? Or something like that. Or, if they're moving their head all over the place, I might make a much more still head movement and ask them to watch my head movement and get them to notice it rather than me tell them. So I'm asking them a few questions, directing their attention to things that they might not necessarily see. And then the next stage is to get them to actually close their eyes and visualize the swing. Visualize what they just saw. And then the next stage is to get them to mentally jump into my body and imagine they're doing it. And then go off and practice. And you see that they can pick up a massive amount of information. I mean, that approach works extra well with kids because of mirror neurons and things like that. But I find that trait is still there with adults as well.
Did you have the same sort of results with that approach in different countries that you taught it? Because I know that you coached at England, Austria, Spain, now in States. Were there any differences between the various golf clubs that you were working at?
It's definitely a language barrier breaker. So when I first went to Austria and I can speak German, it was a good way of improving someone's swing without using any words, and it was very effective when you don't have words. And in fact, the addition of words didn't seem to increase the effectiveness proportionally. So that's an interesting thing that I know has been kind of studied and talked about. Yeah, it worked quite well with British people. I think people who have a little bit more body awareness, who've played other sports before. But yeah, it worked well with the Austrians as well. I think some people might need a little bit more guidance or a little bit more putting into certain positions so they can feel certain things. But overall, I think it's an effective strategy for beginners.
Sure, and I know you talk a lot on your blog and in the book about the differences between the technique and skill.
Mm-hmm.
When would you sort of think about it in your coaching process? So, like with a complete beginner, do you only focus on the skill element, or as you said, you sometimes look at the massive flaws in technique? What's your sort of like thinking process?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, when you get a beginner there, they have nothing. They're a complete blank canvas. And with a complete beginner, the sheer fact that they're going to be practicing is going to improve their skill regardless. So with a beginner, you could focus a little bit more on the technical and the concept areas, because you need a player to understand certain concepts, really basic ones, such as if you hit the tee, the ball will fly in the air, or where to hit on the face, or club face controls direction. As we know, they're not perfectly accurate. The club face, the direction is actually controlled by path and club face, gear effect, things like that, even things we don't know about yet. But you need to give a generalizable rule to a beginner that is sufficient to get them in the ballpark. So working on those concepts, making sure they understand those so that their practice is effective and they're able to self-organize a little bit better. But yeah, you could be a little bit more hands-on with certain technical things, because the skill part, they'll get that part for free to a certain extent. As it gets to a better player, they might have great technique. They might have a technique that should be producing results, and they'll probably already have concepts that are in place that they know where a divot should be, or maybe they understand face and path, but they're not able to do it. And then you have to look into, well, why are they not able to do it? Is it where their attention is? Is it their skill? Are they just not practicing in a way that's conducive to improving skill? I mean, as a coach, we have to use a lot of instinct in terms of looking at a player and saying, well, what's the weakest link here? Do they know what they're trying to do? What's their skill level? Is their technique able to accomplish what they're trying to do? I think as most coaches will jump always straight into the technique when that might not be the issue. I mean, we see plenty of players on tour with certain techniques who are highly skilled and creating great results. Yet when an amateur has a similar swing to a professional we jump in and we say, well, let's change your swing. And so, well, let's have a look at a pro with a similar swing and say, well, what's the difference there? What can we work on those things instead?
Yeah, you mentioned coach's instinct. What would you say? Like, what would you recommend a young golf coach do to sort of improve their instinct? Is there anything else apart from sheer experience?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's put in thousands and thousands of hours. I mean, obviously, the more you learn about the golf swing, the more you look at golf swings from a day-to-day basis. So, getting on YouTube, recording swings, breaking them down frame by frame, having a look what's important in the golf swing, what's not important, learning about biomechanics, because lots of the new information that's come out is not so much what to teach, but it helps us identify what not to teach as well. So I think lots in the past we're finding out lots of things that we taught in the past were either irrelevant or even damaging to a certain extent. So I think that's just as valuable of what to know. But yeah, in terms of the instinct, just putting in sheer number of lessons to know that how a change is going to affect someone. You get a gut instinct as a teacher. You look at a player and you think, well, I could change X, Y, and Z. Or you see a swing and your brain comes up with a list of maybe 100 things that you could do with this player. Then you have to weigh up, well, what's right for this player? What's going to have the biggest bang for the buck? How much are they practicing? Do you think they can implement that? There's so many factors that even I don't know what my brain is going through, but it comes out as a gut instinct.
It's a complex task. So here's something I've been thinking about recently. So, like you mentioned it as well a little bit about the important parts of the swing and like the importance of concepts. So I've been thinking about like what are the basic. I don't want to call it skills because it's a bit guiding to what I'm thinking. But what are the basic blocks of golf? So if we get a brand new golfer, what things do they need to learn quickly to speed up their golf skills? So like the traditional answer would be the grip, posture, stance, and I'm not so sure about it. What would you say are like the basic blocks?
There's so many. For a complete beginner, and it is on an individual basis as to where you put the effort in as well. I mean, some people might take 3, 4, 10 sessions just to grasp the concept of picking an intermediate marker in front of the ball. So in terms of alignment, I'm not a stickler for you have to be perfect train tracks, parallel, things like that. But I like to see a relatively consistent alignment. What you see with beginners is they'll stand up there and they'll be 45 degrees left of the target 1 minute, 45 degrees right of it on the next swing. And I think that can make things a little bit more difficult. I have beginners who aim, say, 10, 20 degrees left with their feet, but they do that consistently or relatively consistently, and I'm fine with that. Kind of a Lee Trevino style, maybe. So yeah, it's a tough one to say in terms of alignment. Yeah, I like to see certain things, but I'm not such a stickler on them. Grip, again, I do show people how I grip the club. I get people into a ballpark with it, but I understand that just like in my own development, my grip changed as I developed. I didn't have the same grip when I first started as I did at the end. And, grips have to go with concepts as well. If someone's trying to scoop it and get under it, then they're using a weak grip for a reason. It's because they can try and master that concept with that. So yeah, the grip has to go with the concept. You're seeing it as just a big mesh. Everything influences everything. And putting things into isolation sometimes doesn't work as well as we think it would. You can change a grip and it can look like a pro's, but if they're trying to do something with the ball that doesn't match that grip, all hell breaks loose and you make them worse. They don't want to come back. And again, then that goes into the personality aspect with the player. Are they the type of person who is, right, this is the right way, I'm going to stand here and do this until I get it right? Or, in the participation part, you give someone something that's completely correct, but if it doesn't perform for them straight away, they might be like, well, I don't want to play this game anymore. I don't want to get coaching anymore. I'm just going to figure it out myself. So you're having to, as a coach, battle with the bigger picture rather than just here's the right way to do it. So it's almost an impossible question to ask if I want to be truthful about it. I could say, yes, basic alignment, basic grip, basic posture. You don't want someone standing 10 foot away from the ball, face a foot from the ground and reaching out for it. There are certain positions that are going to make it difficult to hit a golf ball, but I'm a little bit more lenient, especially in the early stages, as to where people are with that.
Because it will change as well, wouldn't it? Like, it's not like if some people say that you need to start with the perfect technique, because then you will have a lot of trouble going back to the good technique, whatever that means. But
yeah, I mean, that's the idea. But then I only have to look at lots of German golfers who do everything the correct way and can't hit a barn door. Sorry, German golfers. But as a generality, Germany, they have to get certified to play golf. Generally, they do like to do things the right way, and you see these perfect grips, perfect stance, perfect postures, and players who are completely unskilled. And then you see the opposite. You go to South America and you see some guys who are more homegrown with their swings. Their grips don't look what would be deemed functional, yet they have all these skills to be able to hit the ball whichever way they want. So there's a balance in there, I'm sure. And as a coach, we should fall in the middle of the spectrum there, and guide people down the right road, but understand that they're gonna go off the road occasionally, and that might not necessarily be a bad thing. If we look at our own developments as players, we were off the road for most of the time, and yeah, we turned out okay.
Sure, yeah. And you said that right now you coach, you do just group coaching. Would you say that for beginners is one or the other like better, the group versus individual coaching?
In an individual lesson, you can see a bigger jump in someone, but that jump can be completely lost if they don't have control over that, or if they're not being guided constantly. So I think for beginners, for higher handicappers, the coaching process or having more supervised practice is better, because you can give them smaller bits of information as well, which is usually better, I feel. Even if a person feels like, oh, I achieved so much in that one lesson, it's pointless if it's all lost. For a better player, for someone who's 5 single-figure handicaps, maybe, you can give them that big leap in the lesson, and they'll feel like they change it, and they already know how to train for that. So you can be, as a coach, you can be satisfied in the fact that they're going to go off and they're going to be able to train it. They're going to have some semblance of whether they're doing it too much or too little. And they're going to know the right time to come back to you as well to say, look, I think I'm ready to move on to the next thing. That's always a difficult thing on an individual basis, but generally players who have got down to a decent level, they know how to train. It's very difficult to get down to a decent level of golf if you don't know how to train. I know there are exceptions to the rule with that, but generally you look at good players and they're doing things the way that all good players do without being told to do it. So so I think the higher handicappers, the group coaching does benefit them more, but to the same extent the low handicappers benefit from the group coaching as well quite a lot.
Yeah. I mean, especially with beginners, as you mentioned, the constant exposure is so crucial. As you said, like some people might struggle with grasping a simple concept for a few weeks, and if you have them for just one lesson, it's so easy to lose them.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if at $200 an hour, if all you go through with someone is, here's an intermediate target, and if that takes 10 lessons for them to get, then that's $2,000 spent on an intermediate target. So it's not really cost effective. Whereas the $130 a month, where they can come up to 20 sessions a week, you can get a lot more done on the simple things. Yeah, it's good that way.
Is there something that you think we didn't talk about in terms of, I would say, around the topic of coaching complete beginners? Is that's probably the focus of most listeners?
I suppose one of the things that I talk about in the book is skill acquisition, and I suppose you ask the question of how do you treat beginners versus more elite players in terms of accelerating skill acquisition, and whether we should or not. I think things like random practice, so using more or different clubs every time, so changing from a 7-iron to a driver to a wedge every shot, increasing pressure on your practice, so maybe having more people watching you or certain tasks that create pressure, increasing task difficulty, so setting harder tasks, even more difficult than real golf. So maybe you use a club which has constraints to it to stop any missed strikes. So something like the I can't think of it now. There's a club with a lot of the face cut out, so you can
Toe
only hit
striker,
this.
is it?
Yeah, the Tour Striker. Yeah, that's it. And there's another one, the PSP, which is a really small club head. So using clubs like that, the task difficulty is increased, and as a result, the learning is increased. Things like quantifying, testing, questioning versus telling as well. So as a coach, I could walk in and I could tell someone something, and that might change them quickly, but they'll also forget that quicker, and they don't take control over it. Whereas I could walk in and question a player about certain things. So, okay, why did that happen? What could you do to change it? So I'm not giving them the answer necessarily. I'm just helping them in the problem solving part. And also something such as being hard as a coach. So sometimes I will, if it's only for a minute, I'll say, come on, you can do this, and be a little bit more militant over it. So all those things, random practice, pressure, increased task difficulty, testing, questioning, being hard as a coach, they are things that I have found improve the speed of skill acquisition. But they are also things that I might not do with a beginner, because a beginner might not be emotionally ready to handle those things. So, such as task difficulty, if I set them something that they can only achieve 3 times out of 10, for a beginner, that might really demoralize them, really knock their confidence down. Whereas if it's Tiger Woods or in his prime or whatever, if I set him a task that he could only achieve 1 time out of 10, his mindset would be, I'm going to stay here and practice this until I can achieve it more, even if it's 2 or 3 times out of 10, and he'd see that as a success. So the psychology of beginners and elite players is often very different. Again, there are outliers to that. So yeah, there are certain things there that I wouldn't do that I know speed up skill acquisition, but I can't do because I'm trying to create fun for the players. I'm trying to match their goals, which might not be speed up improvement. It might just be to have fun. The things that I would do that speed up accelerating skill acquisition, and I do this for good players and beginners, making sure everything's in context. So even if you're working on something such as brush the grass here, something as simple as that, I'm constantly explaining to them why that skill is important on the golf course. And we're setting up practice drills as well, which are much more contextual to actual golf. So if we are to do something such as hit a driver, then walk over to the green and hit a putt, I explain to them that this might be a little difficult, but this is really what you're going to be doing on the golf course. You're going to be changing clubs every time. Or, when I'm getting them to hit towards a target, I don't just get them to hit towards one sign. I'll pick 2 targets and I'll say, this is because you're trying to imagine a fairway on the golf course. And if you hit the fairway, you get a much greater chance of having control for the next shot. So everything, as small as those little ideas are, they add context. Also feedback as well. That speeds up skill acquisition. So something simple like the Dr. Scholl's on the face of a club. I'll do that for beginners and good players, speeds up skill acquisition, and it's not detrimental to beginners. The main idea there is not everything that speeds up skill acquisition is something I would use with beginners.
Sure, that's probably the main difference between participation and performance coaching. That the goals are just different. It's not all about skill acquisition. It's so many different things.
Yeah.
So the contextual comments. I guess the goal is to improve transfer to the golf course, or is it to sort of motivate and?
It's improving transference. So that's something I found with beginners. Say we set up on the practice green and they practice a 20-yard chip shot, and they get pretty good at it. And then you take them on the course for the first time, and they get to a 20-yard shot. It's a chip shot, and they look at you and they go, "I have no idea what to do." And you just have to remind them that, well, remember when we were in this situation on the practice green? Remember when I put the stick here? And I'd say, "Do you remember what size swing you used? What did the swing look like?" And they go, "Oh yeah, oh yeah." So even that was a learning experience for me. Is that taking someone from one area to another, even if the skill is exactly the same, and this gets back to, you have to get people on the golf course. I think it's very difficult and a bit more daunting for a beginner to go straight to the golf course, and sometimes that can be a bit of a panic attack mode for people. So that's where I do see the benefit in practice facilities, which are a little bit more calmer. People get a few more tries. They get to do it on their own without people watching, without people behind pushing. So it relieves some of the pressure for beginners, which is huge. But you constantly, as a coach, have to remind them, put them in context and take them out of context again, but constantly link it to the idea that this is what we're doing on the golf course.
Yeah, Neil Plimer, the previous guest on the podcast, has a quite interesting process with beginners. Like he starts with them on the golf course, but on the putting green. First hole, putting green. Then on the second hole, he might do a few chips. Third hole, a few pitches. And so that sort of starts with the context, and then he can go to the practice areas, and everyone sort of knows why they are hitting balls on the range or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. I certainly like to do that with beginning players. As the first time, just getting them seeing what the golf course is, explaining this is a fairway, this is the rough, this is a putting green, and then go into the practice facilities so that then they can practice with that context in mind. It's kind of like when I was revising for exams. I would always like to know what the exam hall was. So if I could imagine the room that I would be doing the test in, for some reason that would help. I remember turning up for an exam once, and they said, "Oh, this hall is shut. We're moving to a different hall," and my mind just started to panic. It's like, well, I haven't practiced with this one in mind. So that context is huge, really. Our brains learn better with context. So,
do you do with the group coaching that you do now? Do you do any stuff on the golf course, or is it all on the practice facilities?
Yeah, we go on the golf course as much as we can. It can be a little bit more difficult with bigger groups of 8 people or more. But especially if we have a smaller group for the day, I'll try and get on the golf course as much as possible.
What sort of task? Like how does it work logistically if you have a group of, I don't know, 8?
We'll split it into two 4-balls, and I'll put some of the more experienced players with the beginners to help guide them through. Usually we'll play a game such as Texas Scramble, so there's a lot less pressure for the players. I explain it's just hit your shot, and then we pick the best one, move everything together, so they're not panicking by playing their own ball constantly and taking more shots than the other players. So everybody's playing together, everybody's helping each other out, everybody's encouraging each other because they all want to do it the best that they can. So it's a good game for beginners.
Would you then have some tasks on the course, or?
Occasionally, yeah. So we've played it before where players start 25 yards away on each hole, and if they par it or better, then they move back another 25 yards. So that will, over the course of time, start to set the task difficulty relative to the player's skill ability.
Mm.
So beginning players will stick on the 25-yard holes, and better players will have progressed back to 150 yards or so. Then we kind of keep in mind where someone was at the end of a round, and we say, so you remember you're still on 25 yards. So next time we come onto the golf course, players can start on their respective yardages.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, simple.
Effective.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Adam, where can people find you? If they want to learn more about you, if they want to buy the book, what's the process?
The book is on Amazon.com. Also, it's in France, UK, Canada, Germany, Italy, and Spain. So you can get it from those Amazon stores as well. It's called The Practice Manual, the ultimate guide for golfers. So lots of that goes into how to train effectively, certain concepts that are valuable to getting good at the game quickly. There's just so much in the book, to be honest. Each chapter is like its own different topic. I also do a lot of free information on my blog, talking about how to train different concepts that are not talked about in golf, kind of deeper concepts. So that's www.adamyounggolf.com. And on there also, if you don't like books or you don't like reading too much, I have a video series called The Strike Plan. So that's dedicated to crisp pro quality strikes. So ball turf strike, center face strike. So those are vital skills for increasing your consistency, increasing your distance control. So they're gonna create much better scores very quickly.
And all three are highly recommended, especially the book. It's so good.
Thank you,
Adam. Thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure as always.
Me on.
People listening, hit Adam on Twitter at AdamYoungGolf. Go to his website, Adam Young Golf. Buy the book, The Practice Manual. It's awesome. And I'll hear you next time. This is Wojciech again. Thanks so much for listening. If you have any sort of comments, feedback, whatever, shoot me an email at hi@ParticipationCoaching.com, or you can go to the website, ParticipationCoaching.com, and comment below this podcast episode. On the website, you can also sign up for the mailing list. So if you want to subscribe and receive the updates of all the new episodes on your email, no spam, go to ParticipationCoaching.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate if you could share it with your network. The more people know about this sort of stuff, the better off we all will be. So thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.